So here, the potato and the pumpkin. So after each question, without graphing, explain or show your reasoning. So this equation, h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 64, represents the height in feet of a potato gun after it's been launched. So remember, this negative 16t squared, that is the effect of gravity. This plus 80t means it's launched at 80 feet per second. And then here, this plus 64 is your initial height. So to write an equation that can be solved for when the potato hits the ground, that's 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 64. So I need 80t and then plus 64. So now to solve this, what we would do is use Pythagorean or quadratic formula. X equals negative b, so negative 80, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 80 squared, minus 4 times negative 16 times 64, all over 2 times negative 16. So what I'm going to do here is simplify this 80 squared minus 4 times 16 times 64. So 80 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 64. And then after that, I'm going to take the square root of that answer. So the square root of that answer. And this is about 102 point, I'm going to go with 45. So this is negative 80 plus or minus 102.45 over negative 32. So we're going to have two answers, negative 80 plus 102.45, all divided by negative 32. So to do that in here, I'm going to put parentheses. So negative 80 plus 102.45, close the parentheses, divide that by negative 32. And this is negative 0. If we go back up, was negative 0.70 seconds. And then our second answer is going to be negative 80 minus 102.45, all divided by negative 32. So here, negative 80 minus 102.45. I'm going to hit equals. Then I'm going to divide by negative 32. And that is 5.7 seconds. So here, when it hits the ground, my only answer that makes sense is 5.7 seconds. Now, to write an equation that can be solved when it's 40 feet off the ground, well, the height would be 40 equals negative 16 t squared plus 80t plus 64. So then here you would subtract 40 from both sides. And 0 equals negative 16 t squared plus 80t plus 24. And then what you would do here is use the Pythagorean theorem. So negative 80 plus or minus the square root of 80 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 24 all over 2 times negative 16. So what I'm going to do here is calculate this discriminant, the square root of b squared minus 4ac. It's called the discriminant. So here, 80 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 24. And that would be 89.08. So negative 80 plus or minus 89.08 all over negative 32. So what I'm going to do here is just go negative 80 minus 89.08, then divide that by negative 32, and get 5.28 is one answer that makes sense here. And then we're going to go back and then do the other one. If we did negative 80 plus 89.08, then divide that by negative 32. And we get negative 0.28 seconds, which doesn't make sense. So we have those two answers. So in our last one, the equation g of t is 2 plus 23.7t minus 4.9t squared, models the height of a pumpkin. Is the pumpkin still in the ground 8 seconds later? So what you can do is plug in 8 seconds. So g of 8 means I just plug in 8 for t. So it's 2 plus 23.7 times 8 minus 4.9 times 8 squared. Then I'm just going to put all of that into a calculator. So 2 plus 23.7 times 8 minus 4.9 times 8 and then squared. And that answer is negative 122. Now, if the height is negative, it already hit the ground. So what happens is the math model here keeps going and lets the pumpkin have a negative height, even though in reality, if I draw a picture of this pumpkin, when the pumpkin hits the ground, it would just sit here. Mathematically, our equation would show it decreasing for forever. That's not possible. So here, at what time does it hit the ground? So we would plug in 0 for g of t and solve. So 0 equals 2 plus 23.7 t minus 4.9 t squared. Now I want you to notice here, A, my coefficient of the t squared is negative 4.9. B, the coefficient of t is 23.7. And C is 2. So we'd use the Pythagorean theorem and go negative 23.7 plus or minus the square root of 23.7 squared minus 4 times negative 4.9 times 2 all over 2 times negative 4.9. So here we have 23.7 squared minus 4 times negative 4.9 times 2. And then I'm going to take the square root of that answer. And we get 24.5. So we have negative 23.7 plus or minus 24.5 over 2 times negative 4.9 is negative 9.8. So then I just do my two answers. So parentheses, negative 23.7 plus 24.5 divided by negative 9.8 is equal to negative 0.08 seconds. And then we do the same thing here. So we do negative 23.7 so again, negative 23.7 plus 24.5 divided by negative 9.8. Yep, and I'm sorry, I added when I should have subtracted here. So let's do that again. Negative 23.7 minus 24.5, and then divided by negative 9.8, and that is 4.92.